stressing on the dumb shit, 'cause God is gonna make a way. Just keep going and keep your faith, so you can win this race. This race called life, yeah, yeah. This race called life. This race called life, yeah, yeah. Race called life. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm grinding 'cause I know that I'm gon' get it. I just gotta have vision, keep faith and be humble. Have some patience with it. I've been A1 since day one, been always on my job. I never been a fake, never had to steal and rob, 'cause I do good business, I'm too good with it. And even though I'm on this road, I'm still daddy to my children. You know I do good with them, and don't like being missing. But I hate when my bills are thicker and my pockets get thinner. But I can't stress up on the dumb shit, 'cause God is gonna make a way. I keep going and keep my faith and my pace, so I can win this race. Win this race called life. This race called life. I'm just trying to win this race called life. This race called life. This race called life, yeah. Race called life. I'm just trying to win this race called life, yeah, yeah, yeah. I keep on running in this race called life, yeah, yeah, yeah. I won't come in last place in life, no. I'm just trying to win this race called life. This race called life. Girl, I just gotta win this race called life. This race called life. Just gotta win this race called life.
Yes, yes. Peace to the chat. Peace to the family. We got special guest in here today, Chef Darius in the building. Go ahead, give him a shout out, Chef D. Let him know where you're from. Okay, he must be busy. He'll be back in a second. He was probably really feeling that song, getting it in somewhere. Today's title is Are Christians Delusional? And this is a book review by Richard Carrier that we're going to get into. The book is called The Christian Delusion. Hold on, let me get my copy over here for you. 1 second. Yes, yes, yes. We deep dive in today over the next 30 days. What I'm going to be doing is showing the scholars, the secular scholars from the other side of the aisle, and we're going to be showcasing and highlighting as many as we can find because, Christian apologists make it seem like there aren't any. And I think it's I think it's real and disingenuous. Let me grab this real quick and share my screen. The word that they were throwing around today was fringe. Fringe, fringe, fringe. And we're going to get into this. Let me get the title screen going. Boom. Are Christians Delusional? And this is the book that we will be reviewing, Why Faith Fails, The Christian Delusion, edited by John W. Loftus. Yeah, and I definitely agree with this title, this premise. I definitely think they're delusional. Trying to make faith reality, trying to make belief reality, that's where you lose me at, And let me know when you back, Chef D, so that way you can go ahead and get your shout out and introduce yourself. But okay, let me get straight into the video then while we waiting on him. Present. Boom, boom, boom.
He is the author of Sense and Goodness Without God and also Not the Impossible Faith. He has a PhD in ancient history. And here he is, Richard Carrier.
Yeah. We need video though. Thought we had that solved. I guess not. Oh, it's happening. Or is it not?
You speakers are so picky. Get us water, get us video. Now we need a microphone.
Hey, the slides are half the fun, man.
How many skeptics does it take to turn on a projector?
Well, while we're waiting for that, I'll tell you that my talk is going to be about this book called The Christian Delusion. It's edited by John Loftus, has several chapters in it, and I'm going to be talking about that book and why you should buy it. It'll be very useful to you. It's also the book that you should give to your Christian friends if you want to introduce them to something that will outrage them, but also educate them. Do we not have it yet? The title of this book, The Christian Delusion, is a riff on Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion. And Richard Dawkins got criticized a bit for being somewhat unscholarly, somewhat unthorough, or not responding directly to what Christian apologists argue as if he was out of touch or whatever. So we took that critique up as a challenge, and we got a bunch of experts together who actually are experts in all these different fields, and put a bunch of chapters together that are scholarly and well-researched and thoroughly cited and do respond to the criticisms and apologetics of the field. And we focused on Christianity, of course, because that is the main bane of our existence at present. Not that Islamic people don't read our books, so that's kind of useless, but the Christians kind of are forced to, ultimately. Do we have it coming? No?
God hates you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have more time later then, right? To make up.
Yeah, we have dinner after you.
Is there something wrong here? No, you would have blank screen if it was...
Yeah?
Yeah, you would have like a blue screen if it was... Something's happening.
All right, everybody pray.
Which is a classic example. I can see it's happening. So if you all did pray, this would be a proof of answered prayer.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Plug your book and call Rebecca Watson out and sell buttons.
JT wants me to call Rebecca Watson out and sell buttons. I'm too even keel to do that kind of thing, though. I think it's really 50-50 odds as to which one of us will get drunkest, the quickest.
It'll probably depend on who buys the more buttons.
Yeah, yes. Well, true. JT says it depends on who buys the most buttons. He's trying to plug the buttons, which is a way for you to donate and have a little souvenir of this event. And help support not only this event, but hopefully encourage them to, and maybe give them a little extra money to support Skepticon 4 next year. But in terms of the drinking game, I give it 50-50 odds which of us will collapse first. However, all of you wearing Team Watson buttons, it makes logical sense that you should all be buying me drinks tonight. Right? I'm just saying. All right, let's begin. The topic of my talk today is, are Christians delusional? Let's find out. First, we got to define terms. What do we mean by delusion? There's the colloquial sense of delusion, which is a false belief or opinion. For example, he has delusions of grandeur is a common phrase. I'm not talking about that. The other is from psychiatry, which is a false belief that is resistant to reason or confrontation with actual fact. Now, there's a politically correct version of this psychiatric term that you'll find in actual diagnostic models that makes an exception for religion without actually telling you that's what it's doing. And this is the actual formal definition. a false belief based on an incorrect inference about external reality that is firmly sustained despite what almost everybody else believes, notice that insertion there, and despite what constitutes incontrovertible and obvious proof or evidence to the contrary. Now, I want you to take that bit in italics and take it out, and let's just read the definition, the formal psychiatric definition. A false belief based on an incorrect inference about external reality that is firmly sustained despite what constitutes incontrovertible and obvious proof or evidence to the contrary. Obviously, if you take that little section out, that little italicized part, you still are talking about a delusion. I mean, it's quite clearly that's what we're talking about here. Just because you have everybody in the room is deluded doesn't mean suddenly it's no longer a delusion. You just have the whole room is deluded.
Let me pause it right here, because this is one thing that the Christian apologists just love to do. They love to act like, since there's a major consensus of people who believe in the bullshit, that it's right. And that's a fallacy. Like he just explained, just because everybody in the room is suffering from a delusion doesn't mean that it's not a delusion. It just means everybody's fucking crazy. And it's a sad state of affairs where we've come to, when the superstitious and the ignorant are running academics and society. Facts. Yeah, well, Shayna said facts, big facts. Let's go.
And so anyway, so I'm going to not use the politically correct definition. I'm going to talk about just the basic definition, a false belief that is resistant to reason or confrontation with actual fact. And I'll say that not all false beliefs are delusions. There's lots of different kinds of false belief, and I could give a whole lecture on all the different kinds, but I'm only going to talk about one delusion as one particular kind of false belief. And for a false belief to be a delusion, it has to meet these three criteria, all three. The first is certainty. It has to be held with absolute conviction. If you're kind of wishy-washy about it, it doesn't really qualify. It also has to have incorrigibility. That means it's not changeable by compelling counter-argument or proof to the contrary. And that's one of the key features of delusion. And the third criterion is impossibility or falsity of content. In other words, it has to be implausible, bizarre, or patently untrue. Now, there are different kinds of delusion. Delusion comes in many degrees. Here you got my official Dr. Carrier delusion scale. You go from mildly delusional. Now, we all are mildly delusional. Actually, psychology has proven that we all harbor a variety of different kinds of mild delusions. Guys often think they're hotter than they are. Women often think they're less hot than they actually are. And they can actually show this with objective tests. They can have everybody in the room look at your picture and rate how attractive you are, and then have you rate how attractive you are, and you can see the difference between the average objective measure and your measure. These are the kinds of mild delusions you have.
And this is funny because everybody knows that one person who always claiming they far from ugly, but GPS says we have arrived. You feel me? Cut it out. We all know people who are mildly delusional in some effect, in some area of life. You feel me? I see you over there laughing at that. You like that joke right there?
I was laughing because I was about to say, some will say beauty is an eye of the beholder, though.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? I like when you, that's why I invited you on. This is Chef Darius, everybody. Go ahead, give him a shout out. Tell him who you are, where you from, and what you represent, man.
Yeah. So I'm Chef Darius, I don't think I would affiliate myself with any particular group or religion. I did grow up learning about Rastafarianism and Christianity. That's what I really got my introduction into religion. But as I grew older as a man and I got into theology and shit, I would like to consider myself maybe not necessarily an omnist, but I like to study every religion and understand every religion. So,
okay, so you would consider yourself maybe agnostic atheist, or
no.
you just want to avoid all them labels?
Yeah,
period.
I don't got no group.
I feel you. I'm the same way. I'm the same way with it.
I like to study everything. I don't limit myself, or I don't follow any certain religion or way of life, if you will, culture. But I'll pick aspects from each one, and if it applied to my life, then it applied to my life. If I could take some positive out of something, I'm gonna take some positive out of something.
Most definitely.
Say, eat the meat and spit out the bones is one of the sayings.
Eat the meat, spit out the bones. I like that. That's you always playing devil's advocate when you come on here.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just makes me think of the saying, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But sometimes I think, yeah, I digress. Let's keep it moving. We got Pandemis first round champion, defeated J Fax in the tournament in the chat. Peace to you, Pandemic. Shout out to you. And Shayna says same. Yeah, she feels the same way. So she probably takes a little bit of what works from everything. And I see from her Facebook that she's definitely into the studies of all that shit. So that's the same thing I'm doing. But let's get back into Richard Carrier, Dr. Richard Carrier, and see what he's talking
One of the
about.
common ones is people overestimate how competent they are at a skill. And ironically, the less competent you are, the more you overestimate your competence at the skill. And this is a universal thing. It's the way our brains work. And anyway, so there are mild delusions. Then there are majorly delusional people. There's people that get worrisome and then crazy and then, of course, batshit insane. Now, for today, I'm only going to talk about the majorly delusional. I'm not talking about the worrisome Christians or the complete batshit insane Christians. I'm going to talk about just ordinary majorly delusional Christians. I'm also not going to be talking about mildly delusional Christians. Now, what are we talking about Christianity? Let's define Christianity here. Now, I can't take credit for this. I did not invent this quote. I don't know who the author is, so props to them, whoever they are. Who maybe someone can find out.
Can you see that, Darius?
But you can find it on the
pause
internet.
Let me pause it so I can read this to you.
Yeah.
Okay. He just breaks down the belief of Christianity to this: the belief that some cosmic Jewish zombie can make you live forever if you symbolically eat his flesh and telepathically tell him that you accept him as your master, so he can remove an evil force from your soul that is present in humanity because a ribbed woman was convinced by a talking snake to eat from a magical tree. Does that pretty much sum up Christianity as a whole?
Yeah, I would say they use scare tactics of God being able to punish you at any given time and the hell at the end of your life. I would add that. But yeah.
Definitely. And the fact that we don't believe in some zombie in a magical dimension who will save our soul if we eat the pretend flesh and drink the pretend blood of some 2,000-year-old dead man is crazy. And the funny thing is, they call us fringe when we don't believe in these concepts that they've yet to supply proof for.
And another thing is they bash other people that practice, let's say, witchcraft or sorcery or voodoo, and they demonize that shit when they got whole rituals of blood. They got to eat blood and body. That's cannibalism.
Ooh.
You got to sacrifice animals. I mean, Old Testament is sacrificing animals, but they went as far as sacrificing their own children. Well, they didn't get that far, but he was about to sacrifice his child because God asked him to. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, wow.
And what other rituals do they have in the text that you can think of real quick?
So, what other rituals? You got the tabernacle, where they'll light the incense and all that stuff in the tabernacle. But
Christians,
when we sage and we smudge, that's wrong. But y'all can light y'all incense and shit in the tabernacle. The holy oil, you can get anointed with holy oil, but to do yoga and shit like that and be an herbalist is looked at wrong. You know what I'm saying? But they trust doctors and shit and science. So it's a whole, I don't know, they contradictory as fuck.
Facts. Not knowing that that's the root of all of that. You know, botany and the study of plants. It's crazy. Yeah, so let me go ahead and get right back into Richard Carrier. Let him finish. You know what? Before we get into this, let me bring this up right now. Okay? Since we got DMG in the building. Shout out DMG the great, man. You got to put the great after it when you say it, man. You feel me? Okay, now let's get into this term fringe because they've been throwing this around and I'm frankly, I'm not liking it. And we're about to break this down and why they need to take this out of their vocabulary. People use this term like they're intelligent to try to diminish somebody's argument or blackball people who have different ideas. And this shit's got to stop. You know what I'm saying? This is the age of information. We done with all of that. You know what I'm saying? That's just a logical fallacy in itself. But let's keep it moving. The term fringe often implies marginalization or deviance from the mainstream. And when Christian scholars label atheists as such, atheists or non-believers, I'm going to read that word as non-believers from here on out because I don't think that they should be labeled because that, people who make a claim haven't supplied sufficient evidence for them. And now we all of a sudden we give them a term, try to label it as a religion. It's ludicrous. You know what I'm saying? It's fucking ludicrous. Let's keep it moving. Christian scholars label non-believers as such. It can perpetrate a narrative that unfairly diminishes the legitimacy and respectability of non-believers' viewpoints. This labeling can be problematic for several reasons, including the potential to misrepresent the prevalence and diversity of people who don't believe, marginalize these people in public discourse, and oversimplify complex philosophical and theological debates. Okay, like as soon as I posted that I was going live and that Richard Carrier would be, somebody who would be speaking, all through the back chat, all I'm getting is, he's fringe, he's this, he's that. I'm trying to tell people, look, deal with the argument specifically. You can't, it's a logical fallacy to say because somebody was wrong one time that they will now be wrong about everything that they ever say. So we have to start using our brain. And the person who said that goes by Mr. Logic, but then he presents logical fallacies like that. And we see why. You see what I'm saying? Because this is the only way that they can win these arguments, because they know that a talking snake just sounds crazy. You know what I'm saying? And they try to put us in a box like we're weird for not believing it. And I'm tired of that shit. You can't keep doing that to me. You feel me? Let me move to the next slide. What y'all see? Do you still see that faith versus logic on there?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. My mouse not working. There we go. Now, has that ever happened to you? Or have you seen people using this term fringe to try to dismiss information that doesn't go with the general consensus?
Yeah, I've seen it. I hear that, or pseudo.
Pseudo.
Yeah, whatever words that they can use to deflect from debating the topic and just challenging your character or your morals or whatever, as opposed to the actual facts. Yeah, I've heard it all.
Okay, next. First, labeling non-believers as fringe can misrepresent the prevalence of non-believers in contemporary society. Or I'll just say atheism. Atheism is a significant and growing worldview. And I don't consider myself an atheist, though. But this is about atheism. I got this from an atheist website about the term fringe. This shit is so easily dismissed. And some of the people who I had respect for, it's funny that they do shit like this, and then I start losing respect for them. Their biases start showing. According to various surveys and studies, the number of individuals identifying as atheists or non-believers, agnostics, or religiously unaffiliated has been on the rise. In society with diverse beliefs, it is misleading to portray atheism as a fringe phenomenon, as it suggests that atheists are an insignificant minority disconnected from the mainstream. And just like you said, it's not the case. All of that shit is tied together. You know what I'm saying? Oops, let me go back. This characterization can also obscure the fact that atheists come from various backgrounds, occupy numerous roles in society, including academia, politics, and the arts. Atheism encompasses a wide range of beliefs and attitudes towards religion, from outright rejection to nuanced skepticism. By labeling atheists as fringe, Christian scholars may inadvertently erase the diversity, and you already see what's going on. So anybody who uses this term with you, when you try to bring up a scholar, but they can bring up all the Christian apologist scholars that they feel like and try to shove them down your throat as if you have to listen to these people, remember, don't. These people are playing sophisticated mind games with you. And shunning you and trying to make you feel like an outcast is one of the tools that they have at their arsenal to try to get you to conform to the bullshit that they're trying to push on you. Don't let the shit happen. And don't let them run that game on you. You feel me? Let me get back into Richard Carrier real quick, and then I'll come back to some of this.
Completely 100% accurate description of what Christianity is. The belief that some cosmic Jewish zombie can make you live forever if you symbolically eat his flesh and telepathically tell him that you accept him as your master.
Okay, let me pause this because we got Jay Fax in the building. 1-1. He's trying to climb his way out the losers bracket right now. He's doing all right. I'm not gonna hate on him. But he makes a statement. Literally, majority scholars consider him fringe, even the ones that aren't Christian. I mean, nonetheless, did you hear anything I just read? These concepts aren't fringe. And you can try to paint people who don't believe in a talking snake as fringe if you like, but we're done with that shit. And you're not going to keep calling the people who don't believe in all this mythological ass shit crazy. We're not going to allow it. The superstitious have been running this shit for far too long, and y'all day is up, J-Facts. And hope they don't put me against you next in the next round, because you're done. 2 losses and you out. And I'm still the undefeated champ. You feel me? It's a long way for me to fall right now. You staring at the bottom, brother. Okay, again, this has nothing to do with mythology. You're talking about this person. Are you dealing with any of the arguments being made right here, J-Facts? Matter of fact, you want me to drop you the link so you can come on here? Because I would love for you to be able to actually defend yourself and speak your piece. Nonetheless, let's keep it moving. You don't want to come in here and defend that.
He can remove an evil force from your soul that is present in humanity because a rib woman was convinced by a talking snake to eat from a magical tree.
Let me go back.
Completely 100% accurate. Now,
Just
we're talking about Christianity. Let's define Christianity here. Now, I can't take credit for this. I did not invent this quote. I don't know who the author is, so props to them, whoever they are.
Now, explain to me how this has nothing to do with mythology, J-Facts.
But you can find it on the internet. It's actually a completely 100% accurate description of what Christianity is. The belief that some cosmic Jewish zombie can make you live forever if you symbolically eat his flesh and telepathically tell him that you accept him as your master so he can remove an evil force from your soul that is present in humanity because a rib woman was convinced by a talking snake to eat from a magical tree.
Now, the reason that they calling this man fringe is because he presents these ideas in this manner, and they don't want you paying any attention to him. They want you to immediately look at the label and dismiss everything he's saying. Then J-Facts says that it has nothing to do with mythology. The belief that a cosmic Jewish zombie can make you live forever if you eat his flesh and telepathically accept him as your master. That is not mythology. So y'all are trying to debate him as a historian, but y'all don't want to debate the specific claims that he's making, because that would put you in a bind. What that would do is expose a lot about everything that you claim to follow and believe in, J-Facts, and the rest of the Christian apologists. You guys don't want to do that. A damn rib woman and a talking snake. But this has nothing to do with mythology, you will say. And he's crazy and fringe. Once again, like I said, the superstitious and the religious have been running this shit too long. Y'all day is up, baby. Y'all day is up, J-Facts. Your day is up. Your day is up. Hope they don't put you against me in the next round, bruh. I'm not losing to nobody who believe in talking snakes. Let's keep it moving, man. Let Richard Carrier break it down for y'all, man. The people who are fringe are the ones who believe in talking snakes, unicorns, Jesus coming back with 100,000 people on white alien horses from the sky. That shit is fringe. The shit sounds like some Harry Potter shit. And then y'all are trying to put us in a category. Now, I'm not going to let y'all do that. Let's keep it moving on. I'm sorry.
And there really isn't a single proposition in there that your average Christian can honestly deny. Yeah, that's what we believe. What can I say? Now, though, there are a lot of Christians now who've really taken a lot of flack for that, and so we've come out with a new improved Christianity of the maybe last 50 years or so, where they admit, okay, all that Eve stuff is baloney, the rib woman, talking snake, okay, maybe that's all myth. But I still have an imaginary friend who magically manipulates the world for me, and he also magically impregnated a woman 2,000 years ago, and she bore him a son who underwent an ancient ritual of blood sacrifice in order to dispel a curse laid upon me, thus ensuring I will be immortal, although I've never seen this work for anyone else before. So that's what we're dealing with. That's Christianity. That's the belief that we're going to test. Is that a delusion? Now, there are varieties of Christians as well.
Now, if you're in the chat and you think that The belief that a Jewish zombie can make you live forever if you eat his flesh and drink his blood is crazy. Drop a 369 in the chat. Drop a 369 if you think those theories are fringe. You feel me? Y'all not gonna keep shitting on the sane and logical, man. What you over there cleaning, D? What you over there cleaning, man? You cleaning the ceiling over there, bro?
Since you just say they're Christian, but don't really believe any of it, or don't even care whether it's true or not. I'm not talking about those Christians today. There's also Christians who don't really know if it's true. It's a sort of a metaphor or something. They have different kinds of ideas. Very liberal Christians that you can often have a really hard time trying to pin them down on what actually they believe. I'm not talking about those Christians either. I'm talking about the Christians that it's true as told Christians. And the same ones who say it's all true and Jesus is coming from outer space to kill you soon. That's actual polled results. 40% of the American public believes that, by the way.
Okay, let me pause
So
this
we
real
can
quick
talk about maybe about
because
60
they're trying to call him fringe or even me fringe for listening to this guy. But he believes that there's going to be a 2,000-year-old dead guy who's going to come out of this. Christians believe this. I'm sorry, not him. Christians believe. Let me bring myself big on the screen because this shit's ridiculous. They believe that a 2,000-year-old dead man is about to come out of the sky, crack the sky, and come kill half the planet. And they're mad when you don't believe them. And they try to call us fringe and crazy. No, the superstitious have been running this shit for way too long, man. Y'all not about to keep getting this shit off on us.
Of Christians are that it's true as told, but aren't so sure about when Jesus is going to come and kill us. But And there's also a split between what I call the mildly delusional and the majorly delusional Christians. And the mildly delusional ones have personal belief in God, like God exists and Jesus was a great guy. But they have room to move. They'll waffle a little bit on the divine issues of Jesus and so forth. These kinds of happy-go-lucky Christians, I'm not going to be talking about today. I think that's kind of a mild delusion. It's kind of like somebody who thinks they can telepathically communicate with their pets. It doesn't really hurt anyone. It's still a delusion, but
And does anybody know anybody who's suffering from any mild delusions? Things like he just explained. Like maybe you have a friend who thinks that they're haunted, or like he said, a friend who thinks that they can telepathically communicate with their pets. Maybe somebody who believes that God talks to them and they receive prophecy. If you're in the church, that's a delusion. If you believe God actually speaks to you and only you can hear him, that's a delusion. These are clinically diagnosed delusions. And if you go to church, it seems like everyone is suffering from one of these various delusions. Now, to what extreme? That's another question. But they're suffering from delusions nonetheless. Let's keep it moving.
I'm talking about that Jesus is truly the Son of God and whatnot. And that's what I mean by majorly delusional. Or at least I claim it's majorly delusional. Let's see if I'm right. Now, what if someone came up to you and said that they have an imaginary friend named Zalmoxis, who they insist is really real? He's not imaginary, in fact. And they'll never die because this ancient demigod cleansed their soul with blood magic, which grants them the power of living forever in a magical place no one can see. Now, you would immediately peg that as a delusion. It's bizarre, implausible, and patently untrue. Zalmoxis' cult, in fact, is attested in Herodotus, the historian, in 425 BC, 500 years before Christianity. Let me take you back to that. That's a description of an actual religion practiced 500 years before Christianity and possibly still being practiced in the time Christianity was invented. This looks very familiar, don't you think? Think about that. Another example I'm going to give you is the Heaven's Gate cult. I'm sure a lot of you know about this cult. They believed that a spaceship was behind Comet Hale-Bopp that was going to come and rescue them and transfer their souls from their current shells, their current bodies, into new special bodies in the spaceship, and they were going to fly away and live forever in this spaceship. And they were so convinced of this belief that several dozen of them committed suicide, mass suicide. They're actually, not all of them did, by the way. There actually are still Heaven's Gators around, and they still believe this thing. It could rise up as the new Scientology in 50 years. Who knows? Do we have it?
I hit the wrong damn thing. But I wanted to pause it right there and talk about when religion goes wrong. You know, what happens when religion goes wrong? And pandemics, I'm about to drop the link in the chat for you if you want to come in here and chime in, man, because I know you got a lot of insight to share on these topics. You feel me? Let me go ahead and grab the link. What happens when religion goes wrong? Like with examples with the Heaven Gates cult. What about like with Jim Jones, where they put the poison in the Kool-Aid and the whole congregation killed themselves? You know what I'm saying? When too much belief is bad for you. That's why I say this shit is real dangerous in the hands of people with low IQs. You can't just give this shit to everybody. Oh, I'm getting the link. Let me drop the link one time. For anybody else, I mean, you know, I don't want y'all to take away from what Richard Carrier is doing. So if you do hop in, you know, we're going to keep it brief. And there goes the link in the chat. Let me get back to where I was with Richard Carrier. I done lost my spot. I apologize, y'all.
This is a crazy idea. Now, compare this with what the Christians believe. They believe that they're going to get new bodies in a magical alternate universe.
Okay.
That's not as plausible. There's no science to support this. There are no magical alternate universes that have any evidence of.
Hold on, let me pause it. We got the legend, the man, the myth, Nobody. We already know what he's repping. Shout out to you. How you feeling today?
What's good with you, bro?
Chilling. How you feeling today?
I'm good, man. Up here at work. I'm just gonna jump on for a second to mess with you. I'm just messing with you.
Okay, I just wanted to give you the introduction you deserve, man. You know, you be working
I
hard, brother.
appreciate it.
No doubt.
I appreciate it, boss man.
No doubt. I'm gonna let Richard Carrier get back to it.
All right, go ahead, A1.
All
right. So actually, it's either the same belief or at least less plausible even than what the Heaven's Gate people believed. And their whole theory, they actually had it worked out, is the idea of quantum teleportation and neural engineering, quantum teleportation of the information in their current brains to neurally re-engineer the brains of their new bodies in the spaceship, versus the Christian idea that God needs blood to fix the universe, but only his own blood had enough magical power to do it, so he gave himself a body and killed it.
Oh, wow. I was muted that whole time. Let me just go ahead and play this.
Which one of these two religions makes more sense? So if the Zalmoxians and the Heaven's Gators were delusional, so are Christians. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And so we've nailed one of the three requirements here: impossibility or falsity of content, implausible, bizarre, or patently untrue. Now, I won't leave it at that. I'm going to point out how you can actually make this case using the Christian delusion. Christian delusion is divided into 5 parts. I'll talk about part 2 first. And that's why the Bible is not God's word. And there's a reason we break it down like this, and I'll point that out later. There's a chapter by Edward Babinski on the cosmology of the Bible. It's important to note that the Old Testament God, this is the Old Testament, the voice of God, in quotations, himself, speaks with the assumption routinely that the earth is flat and held up by 4 pillars. Now, if even God didn't know how the world was made, you can be fairly certain that the Bible was not written by God or by anyone who was in communication with him.
I believe that's another amazing point. You hear that, Chef D? He said, in the Old Testament, God has the earth being held up by 4 pillars, etc. Like, you God, how you wrote this book and you got creation wrong, or you got the structure of the universe wrong? Like, what's going on? These are inconsistencies that jump out at me, that we can't just look past, and that apologetics is trying to explain away. Let's keep it moving.
This basic idea of water, there's this giant sea up in outer space. In fact, outer space is an ocean, and then there's this big metal firmament that God put to separate that ocean from the ocean below, and then the atmosphere is in between. The atmosphere, this big dome, is held up by 4 pillars. That's the pillars of heaven, and then the earth is flat and held up by 4 pillars, which is the pillars of the earth. This is the common cosmology that was believed. This is the structure of the universe as believed by all the neighbors of Israel when the Old Testament was written: the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Sumerians. Babinski shows this, documents it extensively. They use the same metaphors, the same terminologies, the same concepts. Everything worked in the same place. So when you see it in the Bible, this is just a product of its culture. This is not an insightful, inspired text from the God of the universe, that God who would certainly know that the earth was round and outer space wasn't filled with water. Another point, and this is something I won't go into in detail because I'd be preaching to the choir, but you know these things, the Bible and modern scholarship. Modern scholars pretty much all agree that the Bible is bullshit. They don't put it like that, but when you add up all the things they say, you say, oh, well, that's what you're saying, is it's bullshit. Well, don't say anyone that's what we're saying, but that's what we're saying. The Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, Paul Tobin has a good summary. It's a short chapter that summarizes some of the best examples.
Let me pause that right there. Because that's why I had to explain the term fringe. People do a lot of dancing around how there's no fucking evidence. Excuse my language, because we do have a certain nobody in the building, and I know he's not on all of that. So let me tighten up. How they don't have any primary sources. How they don't have too much evidence. The evidence is slim to none. I had a debate set up on the historicity. That guy ran. I think smartest move in his career thus far. But what was he going to use to prove it? A bunch of secondary sources. So people in the community do a lot of dancing around how BS this whole historical Jesus is, because they don't want to get that term fringe thrown on them. They don't want to be labeled outcasts from the community for being honest. And, it works right now because these people are trying to feed their families. But it's not going to work in the back chats when you throw fringe at me. You're going to have to dispute these arguments one at a time individually, because even a broken clock is right twice a day. So even if he was fringe and I agreed with you, I would still examine everything somebody says. They didn't, according to your own book, a homeless person with no money turned out to be the Messiah that everybody was supposed to be listening to. And here you are categorizing people and trying to dismiss them. So, it's a contradiction of everything you claim to believe in when you do that. So let's not go there. And I'm going to keep it moving. I'm not going to rant too long.
Some of the best examples that are most secured by best scholarship, and he cites the scholars in the scholarship supporting each of these 5 points: that the Bible is inconsistent with itself, it's not supported by archaeology. In fact, archaeology refutes the Bible on many points. It contains fairy tales and failed prophecies, demonstrably failed prophecies, and many forgeries. Both the New Testament and the Old Testament contain books that we know are forged. They were not written when or by whom they claim to be. And that's mainstream scholarship, by the way. It's not fringe at all. So, the book can't be God's word if these things are true. And then John Loftus has a chapter on what we've got here is a failure to communicate. Those of you who know the movie will get the line, but I won't go into that. And he demonstrates in elaborate detail that one thing that God would do if God inspired the Bible or wrote it or whatever is that he would make sure that his message was clear. He'd make sure that you got it like this. These are the morals. This is what's moral. This is what's right and wrong. This is what I want from you. This is what's going to happen. But he's not. He's massively confusing text. In fact, it's so confusing, it leads to massive confusion among Christian churches who've actually killed each other over these. One of the classic examples is, can I have sex slaves or not? Actually, the Bible is consistent on this. You can. There really is no passage in the Bible that says you can't, frankly. And there are 3 passages in the Bible that explicitly declare that you can and give specific instructions on how to manage your sex slaves. So the Bible's not God's word. Part 3 is why the Christian God is not perfectly good. So let's say you say, well, okay, maybe the Bible is full of a lot of errors and stuff, or it's all metaphorical or something, and so we can't really know for sure whether it's God's word, but at least God is perfectly good. Well, there are 2 arguments against that. The first is that the God that's depicted in the Bible, the character of Yahweh, is a moral monster. And Hector Avalos has a great chapter showing that Yahweh, as depicted in the Old Testament, is just as big of a douchebag and asshole as all the other gods around him among the Sumerians and Babylonians and so forth. I mean, he's the same jerk, basically. Does the same things, says the same things that you would recognize as basically, not the kind of guy that you would respect or worship, and as Hector Avalos calls it, a moral monster, which is the polite way of putting it.
Yeah, let me pause this right here, too. I do want to tap in on the moral monster part because I got this saying that the devil's greatest trick was convincing everybody that he was God. Because when you look at the Bible, it's the Christian God that's doing all the horrible things. Look at the Bible kill count. Google that and see who's murdering innocent children. Hey, Darius, are you there? Okay, if you could chime in with that story about the Bears, you always tell that story. I'm gonna let you tell that one. They make fun. What happened? I think they was making fun of a bald head man. All of this stuff is because of this one guy. God's making bets with the devil. God's a gambling man. If you are suffering ills in your life right now, it may be because the Christian God of the Bible is making bets with the devil, like the devil's his homie, and you're something to bet with. Look at the story of Job. The story of Job is crazy in itself. The devil sneaks up on God while he's having a meeting with the angels. He gets his legs back. He walks up in there. It's just wild, but why would you do that to somebody who serves you? Why would you do that to somebody who's giving you your all, on top of all the other horrendous murders of children, the justification of slavery, misogyny, and everything else that comes along with this text that Christians try to explain away? And it was just the times. So is morality dictated by God, or is morality dictated by the times and God changes with the times? Why wasn't he speaking out against these things back then? If you see what I'm saying? So that argument is logically absurd when you hear it. Don't let somebody get that off on you either.
God did all those things, but they're not really monstrous.
Richard Carrier, go ahead and get into it.
Or God can do whatever he wants, and Hector Avalos takes him in on that. But he shows that all the surrounding Bible codes, all the surrounding law codes of the peoples around Israel were either as enlightened or more enlightened than the law code we find in the the Old Testament. Which shows that the Christian God is not perfectly good if you go by the Bible God. Well, let's say you reject the Bible God, you still got this idea of God left, right? Well, John Loftus has a chapter called The Darwinian Problem of Evil, where he decisively proves that the needless suffering of animals, and I'm not talking about farm animals, I'm just talking about regular animals out in the wild for the past 4 billion years, that monstrous, unnecessary suffering is inexcusable. And there's no possible way God could create this universe and still be considered perfectly good. And he addresses these responses to this. A lot of Christian apologists are really worried by this argument and have been for years. You might not have ever heard of it, but they've developed a lot of really bizarre, crazy excuses to weasel out of it, and some of them are quite shocking. And he fantastically did his research, and he documents every single one in response to them. It's a good one. I also recommend this bonus chapter that I wrote that didn't get in the book called The Will of God. It's 24 verses from the Old Testament that decisively show what a dickhead Yahweh was. And you can find that on our companion site for the book, sites.google.com/site/The Christian Delusion. Then there's the why Jesus is not the risen Son of God, part 4. That's the other part of the Christian argument, right? That Jesus has to be the Son of God, otherwise Christianity isn't true in any really metaphysical sense. And Robert Price has a chapter where he shows that mainstream rejection of the Gospels as not being historical evidence is valid, despite a lot of recent Christian scholars attempting to argue against this. I have my chapter on the resurrection where I point out that we do not have adequate historical evidence to believe that Jesus rose from the dead. In fact, the evidence looks the other way.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Pan. What I was saying is anybody who does consider this gentleman, Richard Carrier, fringe, this book is written by over 10 different PhDs. So for each chapter, there's a PhD in their field who's writing about the specific topic. So, when they try to act like there are no secular scholars out here who make these claims, they're lying. They're expecting you to not go look it up. And it's very readily accessible, Let me go to the next slide, just so you can see some of these names. And we have David Eller, Valerie Tarico, Jason Long, John W. Loftus. Okay, that's just the first. That's 4 names right there. Because a lot of times I'll hear people say, name 3 secular scholars who say Jesus didn't exist. Like, bro, I got a book with, I read, so that's not I can name them. You know what I'm saying? Specifically, it's funny because if nobody's still watching, that's a claim that I actually heard him make. I believe almost a year ago. He asked that question, and I referenced the book, but I didn't get to list all the names. Then we have Edward T. Babinski, Paul Tobin, John W. Loftus again with chapter 7. We've got Hector Avalos, John W. Loftus again, Robert M. Price. Then we finally have at chapter 11, Richard Carrier drops a chapter. You know what I'm saying? So this isn't just his book. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead and check some of this out. Stop letting these people convince you. Stop letting these people put pressure on you to believe in something that they don't have evidence to support yet. It's okay to say, prove it. It's okay to say I haven't seen enough yet. That doesn't make you a bad person. Because they do the same thing with every other religion. The Christians do it to the Muslims, they do it to the Jews, they do it to the Hindus. But when somebody does it to them, oh, y'all out of pocket. But are we? Or are we asking pertinent questions because we'll be damned if somebody plays with our mind? When by definition, it's called a belief system. So I digress. Let's keep it moving. I'm gonna let Richard Carey go ahead and finish up.
And this is actually my best refutation of this argument. So if you want to find the definitive knockdown of Christian resurrection apologetics, that's the chapter to go to. And then John Loftus has, at best, Jesus was a failed apocalyptic prophet, proving conclusively that Jesus said he'd come back in 20 to 40 years. The fact that he didn't decisively proves that he was wrong, and since God can't have failed to predict his own return, Jesus can't possibly have been God.
And they still waiting.
So we've got here Christianity is definitely implausible, bizarre, and patently untrue. And you all know this, but you can see that the case laid out there. And it has nice, good, short chapters that really get down to the point and are thoroughly documented. Part 2 is designed to refute the Bible as God's word, Christians. Part 3 is designed to refute that God is good, Christians. Part 4 is designed to refute that Jesus is God, Christians. And really, it does. There's no argument for them left to make that makes any reasonable sense. But just for good measure, in case there were any Christianities left, we tacked Part 1 on the front and Part 5 on the back. And Part 1 really gives the coherence to the whole book. Part 1 is addresses the I don't need evidence Christians. And Part 5 addresses the but we need it Christians. What do I mean by that? I'll do Part 5 last, but I want to give you the general thesis here. You can break Christianity down into various different forms, and they all overlap, so they're not distinct forms, but when you add them all up, you've got one whole pizza pie. When you eat all those pieces of the pizza, there's no pizza left. So once you destroy all of these different versions of Christianity, there's no Christianity left to rebut. So let me get back to that one point. Why society does not... Oh, I could call that the Jesus wheel. Jesus wheel pizza. Why society does not depend on Christian faith. That's the whole... The argument is that, okay, it might be false, but society would go to hell in a handbasket if we gave up Christian belief. So we should convince people to believe it anyway because it's good for society, necessary for society. And there are a variety of different ways this is argued. One, of course, is that Christianity provides the basis for moral values. And so if Christianity would get rid of it, no one will be moral, so we really need to convince people that it's true, even if it's not. David Eller refutes this from the perspective of an anthropologist of religion. He's an actual anthropologist of religion.
And usually that's an argument you only hear from people like who only attend church and don't study this shit at all. Because everybody's privy to the 42 negative confessions. There were systems in play that gave us a moral system. I actually think that the Christian Bible is the reason why people's morals are off and fucked up. Because if at a young age you accept that somebody can kill and murder innocent people because they're jealous or upset or angry, which is what the Christian God does, that can skew their moral compass, and that will affect them later in life. I think this is a major problem in the mental health and psychology of the people today. And the reason why we have, if you look up the list of serial killers, the atheist is like 5%, 5 to 10% are atheists. Most of these people are religious zealots who are running around doing all of this crazy stuff. They're believers. So, how is this system of morals helping us? The statistics don't support that. Just keep it moving.
Wrote literally the textbook on the anthropology of religion. And he argues very convincingly and thoroughly that Christianity is just one basis among many for different moral views, and it's not a very good one at that. So we don't need Christianity. There are lots of options that we can replace Christianity with. The other is atheism. You often hear that atheism was the cause of the Holocaust, the subtext being that that's where we're going to go if we get rid of Christianity. It's going to be the Holocaust all over again. And I'll tell you right now, this is my favorite chapter by Hector Avalos in this book. And you can tell that carries some weight because it's not one of mine. And he says, point out, atheism was not the cause of the Holocaust. And he has a really excellent comparison of the program, the written, declared program of Martin Luther, the founder of Lutheranism, and the Nazi program against the Jews. Point by point by point. They're identical, essentially. Whereas you don't find that there's none of those points in Darwin, for example. There's none of you can read all the texts of Darwin, you're not going to find Martin Luther's list of things to do to the Jews. But you get it from Martin Luther. And he shows conclusively that Nazism itself was basically a Christian movement. It wasn't an atheistic movement. It was very Christian, inspired by Christianity, specifically German forms of Christianity, Martin Luther being one such. And of course, he also
no different than the KKK.
Wasn't an atheist, contrary to popular myth.
But some people will say, these aren't Christians. They're not Christians. They're not praying to our God. I've heard these arguments. I've seen the podcast. I was on the What is a Christian podcast. I just sat in the back. I sat in the back because I didn't want to one, they say never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. And two, I wanted to see them get their house in order. The reason we have all these different denominations is because nobody can agree on one thing. All these Christians is beefing about this shit. They can't even get their own shit together. But then they want people to follow them and listen to them as if they have the truth. When Christian, there's like over 50 different versions of Christianity. Christianity's just the brand name. Like this, you know what I'm saying? Like Gucci or Adidas. This is my Gucci Adidas shirt. It's just a brand name. And then underneath you have a bunch of motherfucking different denominations. And each denomination believes that you have to do something different to get into heaven. Some of them think talking in tongues is okay. Some of them think speaking in tongues is demonic, and you're going to hell if you do that. You know what I'm saying? These are Christians beefing with other Christians because they can't even get their own concepts together. And like I say, a house divided is destined to fall. So, when I see them podcasts, I do sit back and I don't interject too much. I don't get on there and troll y'all. Honestly, I don't. Because, I respect that. Like, y'all need to come through and butt heads and get y'all ideas together and talk as men, and then come talk to us as men in the same manner. You feel me? After y'all get y'all shit together. Does a motherfucker do I gotta get baptized to make it? Are y'all against that? Is talking in tongues cool? Is that demonic? Are y'all with eating the blood in the body of Christ? Or do y'all think that's cannibalism and weird? Do y'all pray to the sweet baby Jesus, or do you pray to the big Jesus with the dusty sandals? Which Jesus are y'all praying to? Are you praying to Yahweh? Do you call him by his name? You know what I'm saying? There's so many different interpersonal beefs under this one umbrella. That's why every time they get into an argument, they just go create another religion up under the umbrella and then call it Christianity when it's different from, That's why you have so many different denominations. Every denomination is an argument. Look at it like that. Two motherfuckers in the church, one church got the beefing, and somebody was like, "Nah, I ain't fucking with that." They look at them like that, like, "Come on, I'm taking y'all. Whoever fucking with me, come on, we going over here. We about to do our thing over here on Sunday." These people weird, and then they just do it like that. They're weird. They're fringe. We got two people both calling each other fringe. How do we figure this out? You have to sit down and examine the arguments one by one. And people know that, but that's not what they want to do. Let's keep it moving.
Arguments is Christianity was responsible for modern science. And you think, what the hell? I have a chapter on this. This is right in my field. I study ancient science. I'm an expert in it. So when these Christians say these things, I know of what I speak, definitely. So I have this chapter called Christianity Was Not Responsible for Modern Science, where I lay out the argument that they've actually made and show why it's complete bullshit. Not only bullshit in terms of being completely illogical, but also in terms of being factually wrong on almost every single point. But you might wonder, who makes this argument? Are you serious? Yes, there are several popular conservative textbooks that say this. I'll give you one of them, a quote from one of them. As a new generation of historians, sociologists, and philosophers of science has proven, biblical religion was not the enemy of science, but rather the intellectual matrix that made it possible in the first place. Without the key insights that Christianity found celebrated in the Bible and spread throughout Europe, science would never have happened. The evidence is incontrovertible. It was the rational theology of both the Catholic Middle Ages and the Protestant Reformation, inspired by the explicit and implicit truths revealed in the Jewish Bible, that led to the discoveries of modern science. That's just one quote. I have others in my chapter in this book. The entire paragraph is bullshit, every single line. There's also one that didn't get in the book that you think might be missing. It's an obvious one.
Origins of modern
Christianity gave us
science.
democracy. If we get rid of Christianity, we get rid of democracy.
And I be trying to tell people the Bible and science. The Bible ain't a science book, y'all. Stop trying to put the two together. Let science be science. Let religion be religion. When science is wrong, it corrects and updates itself. When belief is wrong, it shuts you out, chastises you, labels you things like fringe for pointing out its errors. Don't put science and belief in the same basket. They're not the same. Don't put knowing and believing in the same basket. Let's go. Because look, I'm going to say let's go. Hold on. Because Christians got to stop acting like y'all religion is the only right way. Like, if y'all had the truth, every other religion's doors to their mosques and their temples would be closed today. Y'all obviously don't have the truth. That's why all these other things can be practiced in contradiction to what you're saying at the same time. That's why they had to make a law about freedom of religion, because you niggas can't prove shit, but you motherfuckers is so adamant. Excuse my language. Let me scale it back. Y'all can't prove anything, but y'all are so adamant that y'all will wage wars over these things. Literally, right now, we have small hats in the Middle East trying to take over Palestine because a book said that they are supposed to get the land. Because some guy named Jacob wrestled with an angel. This is mythology, y'all. So wars are being waged today. Bombs is being dropped on babies' heads today because of all of these mythological concepts. This is why I have a problem with this, and this is why I so adamantly speak out about this, because this is the root of the problem, and among many others, mental health, all of that. So we can't sweep this under the rug. Like, why is A1 always talking about religion? Why he bashing the Christians? I'm bashing all religions equally. I feel like if I kick the leg out of Christianity, though, all of them fall. All the dominoes fall. I can still tackle Judaism. They don't believe in, they think y'all idol worshippers for putting a man on a cross and wearing it around y'all neck and worshiping him. And I lightweight agree with them. I wouldn't be, common sense. If I read all of them without being indoctrinated, I would have never picked Christianity first. I probably would have picked Islam because, it's a 3-part story and you guys are stuck on book 2 of the trilogy. Imagine only reading 2 of the Harry Potter books and then thinking that you have all of the information. You don't know what else happens to Jesus. In Islam, he gets taken off the cross, saved, and replaced with somebody else. So there's more to the story. Let alone you Christians don't even read your own lost books in your own shit. Y'all stay, y'all, how many books is in the King James Version? 50 something. How many are there total if you add the Apocrypha? Like 80 something. Don't quote me on the numbers, but I'll debate any book with anybody. So let's go to the comments. A1, why do you say those who would say the suffixology would make mythology the science of myths? Essentially, it is. We could say that the study of. I would put the study of. Yeah, science. Yeah, and it updates itself as new findings come out through archaeology, um, all type of shit. Yeah, and then we use that to So and I study them all equally. I would consider myself an agnostic. I wouldn't consider myself anything. I don't like the term atheist. You can't call a Muslim can't come up to a Christian and call him an atheist because he couldn't convince him to come to Islam. So how am I an atheist because a Christian can't make me believe in their book? We're all an atheist to somebody else's religion. And if you've picked one religion, you just I believe in one less God than you. You think that there's 4,000 different religions being practiced. So you believe in 3,999 other gods. And you just accepted, you disbelieve in those and you just accepted one. Okay, well, I just disbelieve in all 4,000. It's not even a disbelief. It's just nobody's proved their claim. Okay, you tell me Bigfoot exists. I just haven't seen it. We don't see evidence of it. I don't see divine intervention anywhere. Why did God stop talking to people? Why did God stop coming down and helping? I won't say I'm so upset because every time he did, he was flooding the earth. He's supposed to come with fire and brimstone next time and kill half the planet. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not so sure if I'm in a rush for him to show up like everybody keeps saying. I know right from wrong and treat people how I would want to treat it. That's it. God, that's inside of me. No debate. That's it. That's all. That's exactly it. And that's the golden rule when you read all of these books. Treat people how you want to be treated. That's the underlying principle of all these different religions. And I don't have anything to convert you to. So it's not like I'm on here banging for something and telling you to follow me. Or not you. I'm just talking about anybody in general. Like, there's nothing to convert anyone to except to spread more love. And, all these labels and groups just create more division. I'm gonna let Richard Carrier go ahead and finish this out though, because he's almost done.
I have that chapter written. It's online. It's an update of an old article of mine called "Christianity Was Not Responsible for American Democracy." It's also available at the Christian Delusion companion site. I'll give you a spoiler on the thesis of the thing. Those dirty little pagans invented it. And there's not a jot about democracy in the Bible. It's totally a pagan institution. So that brings us back to the last one, part one, which is the I don't need evidence Christians. And this is one of the best sections of the book, and it's one that I think you can read, you really should read, because it's not only applicable to religion, it's applicable to all your decision-making in your life. Because it's going to educate you on how your brain has evolved to make mistakes. Your brain is inherently built by natural selection to screw up. And you have to compensate for those errors if you're going to think rationally and accurately. And these chapters nail these things in several ways. David Eller talks about how Christian evangelists in foreign countries actually use established anthropological and psychological science against people in order to spread the faith. They use what has been learned by anthropologists and have several textbooks explaining how to manipulate people in different cultures to adopt Christian belief. And it's a very interesting thing, but it also educates.
And this is what you see when you see like different, I'm not sure if y'all have seen Rasta Bibles, you know, where they kind of, they twist the information in there. They even put ebonics and slang in there, all type of shit to try to connect and manipulate the people. And the shit is wild.
Educates you on how much of your mind is basically permeated with cultural assumptions that you take for granted, and how much culture affects how you see things and understand things. And by showing how that is manipulated to control you, you can understand how to resist that manipulation and avoid the pitfalls of it. And then Valerie Terrico and Jason Long have a Christian belief through the lens of cognitive science and the malleability of the human mind. Both cover all the psychology of these kind of natural errors, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And John Loftus rounds it out by revisiting his outsider test for faith, which is one thing that he's famous for. He's actually the ex-protege of William Lane Craig, so he knows William Lane Craig's tricks. He was once an evangelical intellectual under him. Now he's an avid, hardcore atheist. And what is the outsider test for faith? It's very simple and common sense, really. You must test your own religious claims and texts by the same standards you apply to other religions. That's it. That's all the test your religion has to pass. If your religion's claims and texts fare no better, however, then your religion is just as false as theirs is. Now, this seems like an obvious thing to say, and yet there are many Christians who've blown their top over this and insisted that he's wrong, that this test doesn't apply, that we can ignore this test, and so forth.
My mic is muted. Okay, there we go. I want to play this game and do this test that he's talking about right now, okay? If everybody's in here, hit that bell so that way you get a notification every time we go live. Hit that like button and hit share so everybody can get a bite of this. And the game is, wherever religion you are, think of one other religion that you don't believe in and list the reasons why you don't believe in this religion. Now apply that list to yours and see if your religion passes that scrutiny. And it's funny because we don't have historical evidence for Jesus, but at least, we know Muhammad was a real person. He really waged wars out here and, was busting heads. So, and Pandemic says they got Bibles for millennials with terms like that's busting and no cap in there. And I've seen it, man. Anything to relate to the culture at hand, you got to realize that Christianity is the culture. It's part of the culture. And people are only, the religion that you're practicing is based on where you were born geographically. If you were born in the Middle East, well, I'm not going to use the Middle East. That's too broad. Okay, if you were born in Israel, you would most likely be Jewish. If you were born in Iran, you would most likely be Muslim. If you were born in Saudi Arabia, you would most likely be Muslim. America's a bigger melting pot, but predominantly the majority of the people here are Christians, and this is just geographically true. And so, who are we to say, a Muslim kid born to a Muslim preacher, is he going to hell for being born in the wrong religion? Because according to your book, he's a non-believer. He hasn't accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. So he can't get in them gates, according to, the tenets of Christianity. These aren't my rules. You know, I think the shit's bogus. You know, situations like that highlight the BS in the whole situation. And, you know, something that we need to talk about.
Which is astonishing. But there are reasons why we need to test our religious belief or any worldview against, by the same standards we test the ones we reject. So if we reject a religion for X, Y, and Z reasons, and those reasons also hold for this other religion we're looking at, we got to reject it too, otherwise we're being inconsistent. Why do we have to do this? We have to do this because religion, the religion we assume, and not just religion, political views, anything else based on your geography and where you were, other beliefs can have this exact same background. One of the reasons to get a clue on this is that the choice of religious belief is positively correlated with cultural and geographic familiarity and access. Mostly Christians in America, mostly Muslims in the Middle East, mostly Buddhists in Asia. That generally is not what you see when one of these is a true religion. Generally, you see this pattern when religion is basically a cultural assumption rather than something that's true. Contrast this with science. There's no American science, Muslim science, and Buddhist science. Science is the same everywhere. Physics is the same everywhere. There's a reason why that is, because science gets to the truth of things and people see it gets to the truth of things. Religion doesn't really, so people pick their religion based on the one that's immediately available to them or the one that they were indoctrinated in, and then they go on throughout their life assuming that that's the norm against which they should measure everything else. So if you were born in the Middle East, you'd probably be a Muslim, not a Christian. That's the sort of thing you can ask a Christian, like, well, and then would you be just as convinced that Islam was true? Another reason to get a clue about this is that
So that's the
religious
question.
belief is negatively
If you were born
correlated with
in
intelligence,
the Middle
education,
East,
and
you would most likely be a Muslim. And would you be just as convinced that Islam is true? You know, ask yourself that before you go to sleep tonight. If you were born in the Middle East, you would most likely be a Muslim. And would you be just as convinced that Muhammad is, you know, the last testament, that that's really God's word, and that's what you're supposed to be following? Don't forget, you got the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Last Testament. It's a trilogy, y'all. Come on, man. It's a 3-part series. It's a 3-part series. And if you haven't read all 3, you're doing yourself a disservice.
self-esteem. And in the Christian Delusion, Tarrico and Long cite the studies that confirm all of these things. Basically, the smarter you are, the less likely you are to believe. The more you know, the less likely you are to believe. And the more self-respect you have, the less likely you are to believe. Now, the relationships aren't strong, but they're strong enough to be a warning to someone that you should actually strive to educate yourself to know more, to be smarter, and you can make yourself smarter, by the way. Intelligence is learnable. You should strive to do these things and strive to have more self-respect so that you can evaluate religion objectively and not pursue religion as some sort of mollification for things that you find lacking in yourself. In addition to all that,
and one thing that I think
our
that
intuition is
people are
totally
lacking in
fucked up.
themselves that they look for
And
from
we've confirmed
religion
that.
is identity. I think that, you know, this is why a lot of black people flock to religion, because, you know, we've lost our cultural identity. You know, and a lot of times black folks see themselves in this Bible. You know, they see a people, what's the prophecy say? A people removed from their land, forced to serve evil masters. They'll forget their name and who they are and forget their God. That's the prophecy, right? You know, Spider-Man had prophecy in it. Spider-Man had stuff that was true. That doesn't make Spider-Man a real character. You know, is Nostradamus connected to, you know, is he somehow, you know, it's the same thing. And even, I digress. I'm not going to go into that topic. I'm going to save it because it may be something that somebody can try to pick on me and get a debate out of me about. And I'm going to definitely give it to him. Let Richard Carrier finish.
This was mentioned the other day, hyperactive agency detection. It's actually built into our brains. We over-attribute agency to things that happen in the world. And there's a great quote in there. I probably won't have time to read it. I wish I did, but I'm going to skip over it. If you want to know about this brain module that over-identifies agency, the Christian Delusion has a great section on it, talking about it. A lot of actual experts in cognitive science and the history of religion have studied this, and it's been confirmed. that this is the way the brain normally works. It's the way you've evolved to work.
You know, and,
So that
and that's why
actually
you're gonna want to
prone-
get this book. You know, it's got psychologists are writing in here, neuroscientists. You know, this isn't just your average atheist bashing, Christian bashing book. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing but PhDs, respected in their field. People may call them fringe, but again, you know, dispute each claim individually and stop trying to throw that label out with anybody who doesn't agree with talking snakes. You can't keep labeling everybody who doesn't believe in a talking snake and Jesus coming back on some white alien horse as fringe. This shit's got to stop. Pandemics. Peace, man. Have a good day, man. You know, trust and believe the gospel. Shout out to you. Oh, nobody in the building. What's up, nobody? How you feeling today? Hope you're having a good day out there, man. You know, and me and nobody, I definitely want to see if we can iron out a topic for another debate sometime. You know what I'm saying? Something that we really, really bump heads on or disagree with. The other one, you know, I just saw too many sides. I saw both sides of the argument. I was like, it can go either way. Not necessarily what I believe, you know. I want to argue something I believe in passionately, you know, as I know you believe in this whole book passionately. Appreciate you, man. And I'm gonna let Richard Carrier go ahead and get back into it.
To recognize or assume that there's a conscious purpose behind things that happen. So you might catch yourself arguing with your car, for example. That's the same kind of thing, but you've grown beyond the point where you can immediately correct that information. You can argue with your car, but you know there isn't really a soul operating your car. But people who don't make that connection, who don't start to realize, oh, there isn't really a soul in my car, that's basically religion, except instead of the car, it's in the universe or whatever. There are various other examples.
And that's a perfect example of everybody
messages
or the people who think everything is God's plan somehow. Or you may have heard the phrase, the devil's working. You know, they think the devil always working. Like, what is Jesus doing? Don't answer. That's a rhetorical question. But, you know, the devil is always working and wreaking havoc on everybody's life. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a delusion. You know, you can't prove that. It's not. Let's keep it moving now. And it's sad. I'll be feeling bad for people. I'll be feeling real bad for people. Damn.
Press critical reflection, and this has been confirmed by psychologists. If I scare you, if I say you're going to go to hell, or you're going to lose $1 million, or lose your house or something, the moment I've scared you, your odds of actually evaluating what I say next in terms of critical evaluation go down substantially. And they've actually done control tests where they give information to someone or make an argument to someone who hasn't been scared, and then they make an argument to someone with the fear-based message in front of it, and the people in the fear-based section believe what was told them to a higher percentage than the people in the control group.
And I want you to recognize that this is why fear-mongering in religion and politics is how you can shift the masses to believe bullshit that isn't really happening. You see what I'm saying? This is how the media works. And this is the same way that the Christian scholars in their community work. You know, they're scared to even speak out. They don't want to lose their job. You know, fear is running everything. Fear runs everything. Fear and love. These two emotions run everything. You only get up to go to work in the morning because you scared to be homeless or you love your job. There's only two motivations for the things we do in this life. You know, don't forget that. It's fear and love. Fear and love. And fear can make shit happen. You know what I'm saying?
So your brain is actually hardwired to say, oh, this is scary, this is important information, it's important that I believe it. And it's the same basic problem with hyperactive agency detection. As cavemen, it made more sense to err in the direction of caution. If you overbelieve things that are dangerous, you're going to catch all the dangerous things, and you might do a few mistakes that aren't dangerous or not as dangerous. Whereas if you underdetect danger, then something dangerous is going to get you. So the odds of you being killed by underdetecting danger are higher than the odds of you getting killed if you overdetect danger. So we're designed to overdetect danger, which means we're extremely manipulable by fear. And that's actually how we've evolved to be. It's a basic error that our brains make, and you should be on the watch out for it, because it's not just religion that can be used. They can use this factor to manipulate you. Politics, media, corporations, everybody can do it. Another one is time increases confidence faster than evidence, and this is a weird one. You can take a control group and give them more evidence, and start with a claim and give them increasingly amounts of evidence and see how more their belief increases. Or you can give someone no new evidence and just let them wait amount of time. And the longer they believe something, and they do rates of how certain they are it's true, the rates of how certain they are it's true go up over time, even though no new evidence has been accrued. And we all behave this way. Our brains are actually built to do this, that the amount of time that you believe something is misperceived as increasing evidence that it's true, even though there's no increased evidence. Whereas increasing evidence has actually a lesser effect. It has an effect. It increases percentage or certainty, but its increase in certainty is actually less impressive than the time one. And that's completely irrational, and yet that's the way the brain works, and you've got to be on your guard against it. Another is that rationalization is an autonomous instinct. This was pointed out earlier yesterday. Really good example that your brain makes a decision for emotional reasons first and then comes up with intellectual reasons to believe it. Now, if your emotions are well trained, that works reasonably well. And if your reason is trained enough to be self-critical, so you go, well, I better check that to be sure, then you can correct your errors that this process makes. But you have to learn to do that. If you don't learn to do that, your brain automatically rationalizes anything that you want to believe. So that people who aren't trained critical thinkers, who don't take the bother of living a self-examined life and teaching them how to question themselves and not be sure that their instinct works all the time, those people are going to be highly prone to being certain that they're true, but they'll have all these great intellectual reasons, but none of those reasons were the actual reason that they came to the belief and maintained the belief. Another is instinctive false generalization, and this is one of the things that surprised me when I actually read the chapters for this book, is that if you present someone with, like, say, 3 arguments for a position, and one of them is weak and the other 2 are strong, and they can refute the weak argument, people automatically assume that they can refute the strong arguments. So that actually adding a weak argument to 2 strong arguments actually worsens your case. It'll actually convince them that you're wrong. So it's actually counterproductive to add a weak argument in. You should only lead with strong arguments and not give them a weak one to do. And our brains are actually designed to do this, that if we can catch a problem with the weak argument, we assume that the whole slew of arguments thrown at us are of the same type, and then we can dismiss them all. And it's a way of saving time, in a sense, that you don't have to sit there and evaluate every single piece of evidence. If 1 or 2 don't work out for you, you can basically sort of use an easy heuristic and just reject all of them and then move on to something else. It's irrational, but it's the way our brains evolved to work, and psychologists have proved that that is how our brains work. So we need to act against that and guard against that. And another common one is confirmation bias is innate. We're actually designed to have confirmation bias, to look for evidence for things for claims and for beliefs. We don't look for evidence against claims and beliefs, even though that's the scientific method, by the way. What makes the scientific method contrary to common sense is that instead of looking for evidence for a belief, we actually design a test or something that's designed to find evidence against our belief, if there is any. And that's why science actually works so well, because it works against the way we were evolved to think. And it's important to realize that, and that's another part of skepticism in science, and it affects everything we do, like our political decisions and everything. It's not just religion. But the fact that all these things are inherent is a very strong reason that any Christian or any religious person has to really be extremely skeptical of their religion and make sure that it passes tests, the same tests that they apply to all other religions, because there's all these different easy reasons that they could be misled into their worldview. Now, there's some bad news from all of this, that psychology does trump reason most of the time. And these are studies also discussed in the Christian Delusion. Face-to-face argument is more persuasive than indirect communications. So people who come knocking on your door trying to sell the gospel to you are more effective, even if they have weaker arguments, than a book or the internet. And this has been proven. It's the way people work. It makes no sense, but there it is. But it's worth pointing this out to people that they're very susceptible to this. And you should be aware that you're
Be careful, them evangelists.
And avoidance behavior is natural. If you have this comforting belief that you need, or if you think you've been convinced that challenging this belief or questioning this belief is dangerous, you'll engage in avoidance behavior, and that means swallowing lousy arguments rather readily. Any argument that you can escape with, you will. and avoiding exposure to opposition. So that means not reading our books, not going to atheist conferences, not going on the internet.
And that's what these guys were doing in the back chat today. We had Byron. Let me say his name. You know, I'm saying names. I'm calling names out. We had the fake. We had Cappuccino Face in the building. You know, he was back there. I forgot his name. Slim Creeper. You know what I'm saying? His mustache don't connect with the goatee. Weird fellow. But yeah, they all in the back chat. You know, they're shying. They don't want to talk about these things, and they're using terms as fringe so that way they don't have to look at these ideas. You know, the cognitive area of their brain is making them go through avoidance, and you know, they don't want to touch this. They won't even read through it. They would rather go read an opinion about what somebody else said about him to me than actually look through and just dispute the claims. So they're going to do a whole bunch of reading, but not the actual source material to say, hey, this guy's bogus. I checked it out. I don't want to hear an opinion about somebody else, from somebody else about what this guy's saying. I want your opinion, Cappuccino Face, Byron, any of the other dream team or whatever y'all call yourselves, fake Harlem Globetrotters. You know, stop avoiding this stuff. Dispute the claims as they come up. Stop trying to paint these people as crazy or fringe because they don't believe in talking snakes like you do. Because they don't believe Jesus coming back around the unicorn to kill half the earth with fire and brimstone like you do. You know, the superstitious have been running the show long enough, and y'all day is up, baby. Let's go.
Avoiding forums. Even ones who get challenging and actually go and interact with us often run away. And that's avoidance behavior. It's irrational, but it's how people behave. And another is the fallacy of poisoning the well actually works. It's a proven psychological principle. That
and this is what they do all the time.
Try to argue that someone is immoral or there's something wrong with them or they're a bad person, then all their arguments can be ignored, even if they have really solid evidence and their arguments are completely sound. So if you ever wonder why atheists have to be vilified constantly by Christians, they're poisoning the well. They're trying to tell people atheists are bad people, therefore their arguments have to be bad as well. And it's a fallacy. It's irrational, but it's psychologically innate. These are problems. Nevertheless, we have this out.
Don't let nobody keep trying to push these illogical fallacies on you. You got to check them right where they stand. Throw that term fringe in the trash. Y'all are not intellectuals, and y'all are not smart when y'all use it. Not in reference to this argument, at least. Not in reference to this argument, at least. Not in reference to this material. You're not going to use that as a reason to not look at the claims being made. It's over with. Let's keep it moving.
Outsider test for faith. We can prove that it's a rational way to go. You must test your own religious claims and texts by the same standards. So why don't they? The response that John Loftus has gotten, and he actually presented this argument at a conference of evangelical philosophers, and they all wrote responses, and his chapter in this book is a response to their responses. And basically you can divide the responses into two things, two different ways of responding. And one is, we don't have to test our faith by the same standards we test others. Full stop. Hypocrisy rocks. That's one. That's patently irrational. So that's like delusion rearing its ugly head full on. I mean, you might as well just tattoo
and honestly,
right on.
That's what you're going to get with most of the Christians. They're not going to apply the same scrutiny to their religion that they apply to other religions. They're going to say, oh, the people who even submitted that request that we do that are fringe. How dare they? And why would I waste my time looking at such things? These people are obviously crazy. That's how they do, y'all. That's how they do. And they like to live in their bubble. You know what I'm saying? I can't blame them. You know, maybe some people are doing it because they jump off a bridge without this shit. If that's the case, you really shouldn't be up here debating it then, because you're not in a safe place or a safe space. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And, you know, tell him to apply the same scrutiny to his religion that he applies to everybody else's, and I bet you he put the shit down. Mr. Illogical Fallacy. You know what I'm saying? I digress. Let me let Richard Carrier go ahead and mop the floor with these brothers.
Your forehead, if you're going to say that. Because that's the mantra of it.
You know, I'm kind of upset, though, that he's got this T-shirt on up under this button down like that. I wish he would have kept it more professional. I don't know if they would have let me get away with something like that. But we already know.
Delusional person. The second one is that our religion passes the outsider test because we have all this awesome evidence. And then, of course, that's what the rest of the book shows is not the case. So we've got the second leg here, incorrigibility. It's not changeable by compelling counter-argument or proof to the contrary. They claim they have all this awesome evidence, even when they've been shown plainly that they don't, or they retreat into irrational rejections of rational thought. Now let's talk about the last one. Sam Harris just came out with a book called The Moral Landscape. It's not forthcoming. When I wrote the slides, it was forthcoming. It's actually out now. I got an advanced look at this book. It's a pretty good book. Especially if you're a fan of Sam Harris, I recommend it. It's not fully philosophically rigorous, but it's got a lot of great science in it, and so I do recommend it. And I'm, of course, the philosopher who argues for his position. And I argued for it before he even knew I was arguing for it, but I argue for it using all the philosophical terminology. So I'm kind of like, I told him I'm Huxley to his Darwin, or the other way around. But one thing he points out in this book, and this is what his dissertation, and he has his PhD now in cognitive science, he talks about his dissertation work on the study of belief as an emotion. And one thing that he and other psychologists and cognitive scientists have established is that what we call belief, this certainty that something is true, is actually an emotion. It's like, it's like love or joy or any of these other, it's actually an emotional state and an emotional evaluator in the brain. We've actually located it in the brain. We know where physically in the brain certainty is generated. And we know it can misfire, just like all other emotions can. You can fall in love with someone that you really isn't the same person you thought they were. You can be joyous for the wrong reasons, and so on. Another classic example of this, that's a parallel to delusion, is a phobia. Now, a phobia is an intense emotion, in this case fear, triggered by an inappropriate stimulus, like flying in an airplane, spiders, or sour things. Does anybody know what the fear of sour things is? It's an actual condition. All right. I'll buy a drink for someone who comes up with it later. It actually has a clinical name. Yeah, so there's people who are actually deathly afraid of sour things. They're terrified of them. Now, what makes a phobia is that there's no rational connection between the emotion or its intensity and the stimulus. Flying in an airplane, spiders, and sour things simply aren't that scary. I mean, really, objectively, nor that dangerous. So intensely fearing them is irrational. And we recognize this. We recognize a phobia is not a rational belief, and it's something that you can even say it's kind of a form of delusion. And people will often easily recognize that it's a problem that if they have a phobia that they need to be cured of, and there are ways to cure it. Delusion is basically just like that. A delusion is an intense emotion, in this case certainty, triggered by an inappropriate stimulus, bizarre claims made in an old book. Now, for example, there is no rational connection between the emotion or its intensity and the stimulus. The gospel simply isn't that convincing, really. Thus, being intensely certain it's true is irrational. Thus, intensely believing it is irrational. So that gives us the last leg. A delusion consists of certainty held with absolute conviction.
And I'm not going to lie, this is about 90% of Christians. 90% of Christians ain't read nothing but, they know what's the tattoo that they always get. What's that, Matthew, what? They don't know too much. They know Psalms, the ones you usually see in the most popular tattoos. And then they just have an intense belief that it's true because it was passed on to them from their parents. They don't do too much research, but they'll argue vehemently and pontificate as if, their way's the only way. And this is a delusion, clinically diagnosed, people. Something you can't get around.
All you need to know to establish every single one of them. Christianity is a delusion. I'll give you some good news. Psychology has shown some things that we can make use of. One is that the more that someone is forced to defend a belief over long periods of time especially, but even in short-term settings, The more you're forced to defend a belief, the more you have to think about it, and that process itself can actually, to a certain percentage, measurable percentage, counteract all the other irrational things that I was talking about earlier. So the more you force them to think about the weirdness of their religion or the lack of evidence or the challenges to it, the more percentage of Christians are going to start walking away. It's not going to convert everybody, but it's going to increase the number who do walk away.
Y'all hear
And
that?
cognitive
That's why
dissonance
you got to
is
keep your foot on their necks, man.
Not a disturb, but
And no
an
matter
emotional state
no
that's
matter what they
uncomfortable
do to try to
when-
quell you, dispel you, shun you, you know what I'm saying? Stand on your square. It's okay to say you haven't supplied enough evidence for me to give my soul over to this. It's okay. You're not a bad person because everybody's saying it about one religion or another, even the believers. So you're okay. It's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know. I just don't know. And just do that. I'd rather do that and be stuck there than believe in the wrong things because I chose to let man who can't be trusted mislead me. When we know there's 4,200 active religions being practiced. Like I say, we all are non-believers to somebody else's faith right now. If you're a Christian, the Muslims are calling you a non-believer. They call you a kafir. Am I lying? Chef D in the building. I got a question for you, Chef D. What was that? What story is that where the where guys send the bears to rip up the kids? I want you to tell that when you come back, if you can hear me. I want you to tell that when you come back, if you can hear me.
I hear you. That's my favorite. You know, that's my favorite verse.
That's why I wanted you to tell it.
So, God,
That's why I wanted you to tell it.
I can't think of the actual verse it is, but so these group of kids was walking through these mountains, and they saw a bald head man. They started picking on them, just calling them bald head and old and whatnot. So God was like, all right, I'm gonna send these bears down to eat you little niggas.
Hey, this is the moral monster that we know as the God of the Christian Bible. You know what I'm saying? You know, and it's like when you're not forced to look at it through a Christian lens, you can start to see things this way, and you can start to see how it's morally bankrupt, right? And the logic, how it's logically absurd. That's my favorite. That's my favorite word.
Yeah, that one funny.
All right, let me let Richard Perry go ahead.
And you beliefs that you really want to believe in, but they contradict each other. Or there are two options that you have to choose one or the other. You can't choose them both, and they're really important options, and it makes it difficult to choose between them. This state of cognitive dissonance feels extremely uncomfortable because it's obvious that your brain needs to make a decision, and so this emotion of discomfort is there to push you to go one way or the other. Now, when the purpose of course, is to make decisions. That's the kind of thing the caveman needed it for. But now, when belief becomes a decision, whether to believe something or not, cognitive dissonance can create problems for you because you might end up with contradictory beliefs, and now your only solution is to give up one or the other belief or come up with some rationalization that eliminates the contradiction.
And this is what I actually call this cognitive process that you go through is, to break it down in hood terms, I call it making sense out of nonsense. When you have two conflicting ideas and your brain gets stuck in Christianity and you just have to make up something to rationalize it. This is something that you have to jump through all the time, even with simple things like turn the other cheek and an eye for an eye. Just two simple concepts that completely diametrically oppose each other. You see what I'm saying? So, and there's a host of these all throughout the Bible. You know, if I were to do podcasts on this, I'd be doing podcasts every day for the next 30 days just on this. And it's ridiculous. And, you know, shout out to the people who are questioning this stuff. And anybody who wants to hop in or has something to say, the link is pinned in the chat. You know, don't be shy. Open panel right now because we're about at the end of this. So let me let him finish that. He's talking about cognitive dissonance and the cognitive functions of the brain right now. And this is a chapter in the book written by we'll get back to
Both
it.
of these, you force people into cognitive dissonance. And one thing that's shown is that the starker the contradictions, the bigger the contradictions are, the more impressive or emotionally effective they are, or the starker the options, the more that cognitive dissonance works. So if you combine and sustain both, strong cognitive dissonance creating arguments regarding internal contradictions in their particular beliefs, and forcing them constantly to defend their belief. If you combine and sustain both, it's an effective deconverter of a significant enough percentage of any population. Let's say, even if it were 10% per generation, that gives us the win over like 100 years, for example. So these are the kinds of things that psychology can help us understand. And the purpose of this book is to help you do that. It's a whole toolkit with a lot of information that you can use going out there, and it also will educate you in how to construct your worldview and be aware of the way your brain makes mistakes and how to overcome them. And it's got a lot of great fun stuff in it as well. There are digs at Christians in there, well, Christians that maybe even most Christians think are crazy. Some of that's in there. But it's a good read. I would really please encourage you to buy it because it's my only source of income right now is selling my books. So if you want to support my work, please buy my books. I might have to buy them back, and then I'll be out of money instead of making a profit or something. So my wife certainly wants me to make money, so please help me out with that. I've also written 2 books that are also helpful for this, and they address 2 things that you need to know when you go out armed amongst the Christian wolves, as it is. One is philosophy, and the other is ancient history. And so I've written 2 books that are related to this. My book on philosophy is Sense and Goodness Without God, which is a complete worldview. And you don't have to agree with it, but it gives you an example of how to construct a complete worldview based on science, evidence, and reason, rather than just picking piecemeal or adopting some existing product. I cover epistemology, morality, aesthetics, politics, and metaphysics, everything. And I show how it's all connected and why you need to have a worldview too, and that's also built on this. It's got bibliographies, the whole deal. So it's an extremely useful tool for going out and answering philosophical questions and addressing, and also for building your own worldview and coming up with a well-evidenced, coherent worldview of your own, even if assuming you don't agree with the one that I've built. And Not the Impossible Faith gives you the whole background of the origins of Christianity in terms of, by addressing these arguments that Christianity was so impossible, it could only have succeeded if Jesus was really resurrected from the dead. There's a particular evangelist by the name of J.P. Holding who makes this argument. My book is a point-by-point refutation of his crazy, inane, illogical, false claims about it. But in the process, you get a lot of the fun of seeing this guy get trashed, but you also get educated about ancient sociology, ancient religion, the context of ancient Christianity, ancient Judaism, a lot of things you might not have known. And armed with that information, you'll find that very useful in dealing with Christian arguments. So both of these books will help you evangelize for atheism if that's what you want to do. Do it online, for example, is the easiest way for you to do it, or going out personally in some way or another doing it. Or if you're not going to do it yourself, it would be helpful if you could financially support those of us who do so that we can do the work for you.
Yes,
Either
yes.
way, any of those
Don't
things
be
would
scared
great,
to hit that
but I'd
Cash App
especially
up,
like to see
Astro
lots of
Vibe
people going
Tribe.
out and spreading the meme, as it were.
You feel me?
But when you go out there trying to evangelize for atheism, don't
Drop
do
a
this.
dollar in that joint if you learn something today.
Don't do that. I'm not asking you to go do that. I'm asking you to do something more like this. I don't know who this guy is. You can probably call him or her. They've got to be at least a little crazy and have a lot of time on their hands, but hey. Now imagine if we had people who were paid to just drive this car around and answer the phone, So that's my talk about the Christian delusion. If we have time, I don't know if we do, I can take questions. Where are we on our time? Or is no one even paying attention? Because I haven't.
And again, I'll open the panel, but
Okay,
I'm not really
sure, let's do
expecting
it.
too
I
many
didn't even
people
think
to
I'd be
come
in on
up.
time. Excellent.
Because when you force them to dispute the claims individually, they fail, they buckle, they scared.
Okay, so you
This
mentioned
nigga scared.
how Christians vilify
need to get
atheists
the
and
sound
such, and
effects.
then
I'm
I've
gonna
heard
put
other
that in there.
speakers say that atheists being at the bottom of the political totem pole. So obviously there's an image issue that needs to be changed or worked on. How could someone help improve that image?
Yeah, I'm not the one to ask, really. There are a lot of people who are more expert at that kind of thing. There was a good talk, unfortunately it didn't get on video, by Barry Cosman, who does the religion survey, the giant one that surveys 100,000 random Americans every 10 years. And it's the survey that showed that we doubled our numbers in the last 20 years. Where he points out there's a lot of things that you could do based on what psychologists have learned. But I would go online, find what experts are saying, like real experts are saying about that. In general, I don't think the image problem is really the issue. It's not as if gay people had to go out and convince Christians that they were nice people per se. It's just they had to be more out to the point that Christians actually would get to know them and realize that they're not these horrible, crazy, perverted people. And in fact, that's what has been most effective, apart from ridiculing the Christian right, which has been very effective. And I have a lot to say about that, and I know people criticize the idea of ridiculing religion, but I think it has its uses when it's used properly. But the other is just the more that Christians got to know gay people, realized that there were gay people in their family, that created cognitive dissonance. You love your son, and you have this conflict between your love for your son and your understanding of how great his character is and the fact that he's gay. And then you have your religion saying that that's evil. Now, you have a lot of Christians who then shun their son or reject them, but you have a percentage, always a percentage, that resolve the contradiction by rejecting the religious view. And once they've rejected one religious dogma, they're on the road generally. So eventually, it might take a few years, they'll give up their religion eventually.
You know, and some of you may know people who have been in a situation like this, you know, and if you haven't seen my podcast, King James Was Gay, Proof King James Was Gay, Christianity Exposed Part 2, you know, go check it out at Astral Projections 369 on YouTube. You feel me? I come with all the sources and the receipts, you know, receipt gang in the building. You know, you may know somebody who went through that, and you know, how did they handle it? Did they reject their son or their offspring, their daughter? Did they reject the religious teachings and practices that they had been indoctrinated with since they could remember? You know, and it's situations like these that'll make you look at these situations. And do they go through the cognitive process of coming up with some BS to try to rationalize it and accept both? That's usually what happens, you know.
That's one kind of thing that you can do. Just be more out. Don't be. There's one thing I think Phil Plait said: "Don't be a dick." I don't think there's a problem with being a dick. I mean, it's more a question of don't encourage criminality, for example. Just basically demonstrate that you're a good citizen who's nonviolent. I mean, quite frankly, if you demonstrate that you're a good neighbor, it doesn't matter how cantankerous you are. That's the key thing that's going to change everything. But the other thing is simply confronting the lies. I mean, if you look at how, you might ask, like, how would Jews improve their image in Nazi Germany? Would that even be a rational question, right? So that's the thing. It's really, you have to basically confront the lies, the things that Jews are subhuman and Jews aren't even a member of the human species and things like that are just blatantly false. And this Hitler is an atheist thing. It's just blatantly false. And the more you spread the word and the actual evidence backed of it, the more people see that this claim that Hitler is an atheist is actually under challenge, the more percentage of people who've been told that he's an atheist are going to actually start looking into it, and when they look into it, they're going to find out that they've been lied to, that Hitler was really a believer, and that Nazism was really a Christian program. And so that's how you win. I mean, it's by picking off small percentages over time of recalcitrant believers. But you have to fight the lies in public. You have to get out there and prove that atheists are good citizens, and we're working on all these things. So yeah, that would be my recommendation. But there are other specific things that could be done that experts have been talking about as well.
One of the things that religious do is they recognize vulnerable populations or vulnerable people or find people when they're at a vulnerable time. There are a lot of people who've had an illness or an injury or something like that, and when they come through that, they have this narrative that God wanted me to learn something from this. It's great for you to talk about having a discussion in a pub, and I was actually a little annoyed that we talked about having a discussion in a pub. I heard Randy say that people might commit suicide if they didn't have their religion, and I think that's because we're not offering them a good alternative. I'm a surgeon who does lots of cancer surgeries, and frequently I have to tell people, you have cancer,
I'm about done with these questions, but
you're going to die. And
man, y'all pretty much get the drift, man. I gave you something to combat these Christian apologists who try to quell your arguments with their categorization of you as some fringe person or some crazy, some conspiracy theorist. And they try to lie like all the scholars agree. And there's, and even the ones, like I showed you earlier, most of these scholars are tiptoeing around the fact that it's bullshit. Excuse my language. They're tiptoeing around the fact that it's BS. You know, they're softening their language to try to let you know because their jobs are on the line. They have to feed their families. They don't want to be labeled as fringed and be pushed out of the scholarly community for giving an honest opinion. And that's what's happening to a lot of them. And I'm going to do a podcast on that as well. But I promise you, over the next 30 days, I'm going to bring you over 20 different scholars. I'm not even going to say Christian scholars who you can use and add to your arsenal who disagree with this BS and are open about it. So that way, nobody can keep shoving these Christian apologist scholars down your throat like that's all there is. You know, where was I at on this? Did I read all of these? Make sure my sound working too. Okay. Lastly, the term fringe can oversimplify complex philosophical and theological debates. Atheism is not a single unified doctrine. Rather, it encompasses a range of positions from strong atheism to weak atheism. Um, I would put, I see how they broke it down. Many atheists engage deeply with philosophical and theological issues, offering sophisticated critiques of religious beliefs and proposing alternative ethical frameworks. By labeling atheists as fringe, Christian scholars may unintentionally undermine the intellectual rigor and legitimacy of aesthetic thought. Okay, just let that sit with you for a second. Don't let them shit on you like this. Don't let them keep you inside this box like that's all there is. It's insulting. Peace to everybody. Love y'all. I'm out. I'll get with y'all later. I'm waiting on DMG to do this show. I'm gonna probably be on there in a little bit, so y'all can check me out on there. Religious atheism. Hey, it's got a ring to it. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know. It's got a ring to it. I like that. What's up, Pam? Pam made it through the whole thing. Shout out, Pam, man. We gotta have you on the next one, man. Or we gotta link up and get something going so we can start at least linking like once a week, man, and start keeping our foot on their neck, man. They doing a lot of hollering in the back chat like we ain't got no smoke for them, and I got a lot of smoke for them, man. Let's get it. Y'all have a beautiful day, man. Love y'all. See y'all soon. A1, I'm out. Oh, wait.